Hello, I'm Napoleon Bell, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2011 Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. This is a showcase on how Central Ohio neighborhoods address and solve community problems. The conference goals are to strengthen, promote productive communication, and collaboration between neighborhood groups, community partners, and local government. It is also an opportunity for community leaders of various backgrounds to discuss neighborhood best practices, current trends, but most critically, to network with other neighborhoods. So watch and enjoy the 2011 Neighborhood Best Practices Conference.
Good morning, Columbus. Amen. It is an honor to be here this morning, and I just thank God for all of you being here. It was a little rough, all these detours you got around here, but we made it. I am with you. This is your second annual. This is my second time being here, so that is an honor for me. I want to thank Ms. Sharon Ware and United Way for this invitation. And again, just thank all of you for getting up early this Saturday morning to come out and share and to learn. Troy, thank you for the introduction. Troy is also a native Cincinnatian, so we thank God for that. I'm going to begin. I don't know what my time is. It said 9:20, so somebody please keep, all right, but just because I can talk forever. What I'm going to share with you, I just spent, week before last, I was in a place called Estes, Colorado. We were 8,000 feet in the Rockies. And I just spent 15 hours training the Episcopal Church on what I'm going to share with you in 30 minutes. So we'll do the best that we can. Let me begin by telling you a story. It's called a Sufi story, S-U-F-I. Let me also say this. Please get out your pens and paper. We're here to do some learning today, and I'm probably going to ask you to write some things down. This Sufi story says that there was a village that had a problem that just persisted, a problem that it could not solve. So they finally called for an elder from another village to come and help them with this problem. The woman finally came to the village. The villagers were excited because she came to help with the problem that they couldn't solve. The woman came and she asked them a question. She said, "Do you know what I'm going to tell you?" And they all said, "No." And the woman said, "Well, if you don't know, I'm leaving." And she left. And the village was in an uproar. They couldn't understand what had just happened. But the problem persisted, so they decided to send a second invitation to the woman. They sent the second invitation, she accepted it, and she came back. She came and she asked the same question, "Do you know what I'm going to tell you?" And the entire village shouted, "Yes." She said, "Well, if you know, then I'm leaving." And she left. And the village is still confused and in an uproar, but the problem persisted, so they invited her a third time. But this time the village had prepared itself for her coming. So she came back and she asked the same question, "Do you know what I'm going to tell you?" And half of the village shouted yes. The other half of the village shouted no. She said, "Well, the half of you who know, tell the half who don't know, and then everybody will know." And she left. And this time she never came back. That night, a woman in the village had a dream. And in the dream, she learned that what the woman was saying to them is, you will only learn what you already know. And the wisdom that is needed does not come from outside experts. It comes from within. And all we need to do is believe in ourselves, and we can solve our challenges. I share that to say this morning. I guarantee you that what I share with you this morning, you already know. You will only learn what you already know. As Troy said it when he introduced me, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I pastor a church in a community called Over the Rhine. Anybody ever been to Over the Rhine? All right. Over the Rhine sits in the shadow of downtown Cincinnati. In downtown Cincinnati, we have a corporate downtown. We have Procter & Gamble, the headquarters of P&G is in downtown Cincinnati. The headquarters of Chiquita is in downtown Cincinnati. The headquarters of Federated Department Stores is in downtown Cincinnati. The headquarters of Kroger's is in downtown Cincinnati. Over the Rhine literally sits in the shadow of these skyscrapers. Over the Rhine is considered one of the poorest communities in Ohio. And yet we sit in the shadow of downtown corporations. The dividing line between downtown Cincinnati and over the Rhine is a double yellow line. And believe me, if you're ever in downtown Cincinnati and you cross that double yellow line, you know you just left downtown Cincinnati. There's a stark difference between downtown Cincinnati and over the Rhine. Over the Rhine is considered one of the worst communities in Cincinnati. And yet, over the Rhine has more social service agencies than any community I know. Now let that sink in for a moment. We're considered one of the poorest communities in our city, and yet we're surrounded by social service agencies. There's this idea that if you surround people with just the right amount of help, somehow they become whole. Obviously, that does not work. There's a disconnect between servicing people and people becoming whole. If social services made people whole, over the Rhine would be the best community in the city of Cincinnati and the state of Ohio. And yet, we're still considered one of the worst communities. When we talk about asset-based community development, we call it ABCD, one of the things we always start with is a glass, in this case it's a bottle, and if you can see it, the bottle has water in it. And then we ask the age-old question, is it half full or is it half empty? And the answer, of course, is what? All right, I heard half full. Let's say the answer is both. The bottle is actually half full and it is half empty. The half empty part of this bottle represents the needs, the deficiencies, and the problems and pathologies of community. The half full part, the empty part represents that. The half full part represents the gifts, the strengths, and the assets of community. The problem has been is that most of our work in community, especially those of us who do social services, those of us who are churches, most of our focus is on the emptiness of people's lives. And we continue to try to pour into the emptiness of people's lives. That's why Over the Rhine is surrounded by social service agencies, clothing and food and shelters, and every agency you can think of is there, because our effort has been to pour into people's lives. The reality is this bottle will never fill up by pouring into it. It only fills up from the inside out. This bottle begins to fill as we increase the capacity that already exists. As I said, I just spent 15 hours sharing with you what I'm going to share in a few minutes. Normally, I would hand you two maps. One map is called a neighborhood needs map. On that map, you would see all of the issues that communities face in urban and rural settings: poverty, truancy, drug addiction, homelessness. You would look at that map and I would ask you to name it. And I've been to Columbus a number of times, and I've done this in Columbus, and people would name it. I think Livingston and all the names that you would give me. Then I would give you something called an assets map. On that map would be businesses and people with gifts and community colleges and schools. And then I would ask you to name that map. And normally people give me a different name than the first name they gave me. And then I show them that they're actually the exact same community. And so when you look at Livingston or whatever community you designate the needs map as, I guarantee you the assets map is the exact same community. When you look at the assets map, it's a community that all of us would love to live in. But for too often, we've seen these communities that are in trouble as communities of deficiency. And once you define it as a community of deficiency, people who live there begin to internalize that label we've placed on them. So write this down, those of you who are writing. Labels exclude people. Labels exclude people. Labels are those things we give people in order to serve them. If I can't label you, I can't help you. As an agency, I have to label you to be able to help you. At-risk youth, unwed mother, welfare mom. If there's no label on you, then you really can't come to my door. We serve those people that we label. Labels exclude people from a sense of community. Write this down. Your gift is the key. Your gift is the key that unlocks the door to community. Your gift is the key that unlocks the door to community. Let's consider this. Let's say that for those of you especially who have a faith perspective, that the rest of the world is gone. For those of you from the Christian church, there's something that we teach called the rapture, that somehow everybody's just going to be snatched up one day and some people will be left behind. Well, let's say that we are the left behind people. Everybody in this room, that's not a good idea, but somehow it happened. Everybody in this room are part of the left behind group. It is our job now to birth a new community. A friend of mine named John McKnight, who actually started this work, uses this example, that all of us decide we're going to birth this new community. And imagine that we're back in the frontier days. So we get in a covered wagon and we head out to find some land that is suitable for building a new community. Finally, we get there. There's a creek that is running by, and we have security, we have fertile ground, and we decide this is where we're going to stake our ground. Brand new community. Once the covered wagon stops, this is what has to happen. We need everybody out of the wagon. If we're going to build a strong, healthy community, we need everybody out of the wagon. The more people we leave in the wagon, the weaker our community is. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. Everybody has to get out of the wagon because we need the gifts and strengths and assets of everybody to be shared in community. So let me show you how this works. In Over the Rhine, where I pastor, I'm sitting on the steps of our church one day, and this guy, his name is Clint, he comes up to me and he's pushing a shopping cart of scrap metal. So Clint's pushing the shopping cart of scrap metal. He stops and he sits down next to me. We start to have a conversation, and somewhere in the conversation, Clint looks at me and says, "Give me $1." And I look at Clint and say, "No, I'm not giving away any dollars." And we talk a little longer, and Clint looks at me again and says, "Give me $1." I said, "No, I'm not giving away dollars." And so finally, Clint looks at me and says, "Child, I like you, and today's been a good day. And I probably have more dollars in my pocket than you do." I said, "You might. If give me $1 has been working for you, you've got a pocket full of dollars." So I then went pastoral on Clint. I said, "Clint, why don't you come to church?" I went pastoral. Clint went deficient. Clint said, "I'm an alcoholic." And so I'm still in my pastoral role. I said, "Clint, that's all right. There's alcoholics in church. There's always room for one more alcoholic." But no matter what I said, "I'm an alcoholic" was enough to keep Clint from coming to church. Now, "I'm an alcoholic" gets Clint serviced in community. There are a number of agencies who need Clint the alcoholic. So I would see Clint periodically, and we'd do that dance. "Clint, come to church. I'm an alcoholic." Finally, one of my friends said, "I know Clint, and Clint's a tuck pointer." I said, "What's a tuck pointer?" He said, "A tuck pointer puts the mortar back in between the bricks of old buildings." Well, again, if you ever come to Cincinnati, stop by my office. It was probably built in 1910 or something, old building, and it needed tuck pointing. So I couldn't wait to see Clint again. I see Clint. We do the dance. "Clint, come to church. I'm an alcoholic." I said, "But I also heard you're a tuck pointer." Clint's eyes got huge. He said, "Child, he calls me child. He said, "Child, how'd you know? Not only am I a tuck pointer, I'm the brick doctor. And nobody does brick like me." Well, I gave Clint the job to tuck point my office. Now, it's key to hear what I just said. I gave Clint the job to tuck point my office. And I say it like that because I didn't go to the vestry. I didn't go to the deacons or trustees. Because if I had done that, Clint probably wouldn't have gotten the job. They would have said, "Reverend, we need 3 bids, and does he have insurance?" I'm bypassing all that at this point. I gave Clint the job to tuck point the building. Clint tuck pointed the office. I came back from a trip out of town, and Clint was excited. He showed me the work he did, and the work was excellent. I stand up to preach the next Sunday, and guess who's sitting there? In a nice white shirt, there's Clint the tuck pointer. And the beauty of it is when Clint the tuck pointer comes to church, he brings with him Clint the alcoholic. See, I could not get Clint the alcoholic in church, but his gift was the key that unlocked the door to him being part of our community. Write these 3 words down, please. Number 1, acknowledge. Acknowledge. As community leaders, as community builders, the first thing all of us must do is acknowledge that everybody is gifted. All these people you're serving gifted people. Everybody is gifted. Secondly, write down the word affirm. Because oftentimes we have to affirm that gift within them, because all they've been told is that they're needy. They live in a needy community. They're a needy person. They're part of a caseload. They've been labeled. And the best thing that a label does is allow you to be part of somebody's caseload. And for some of you in here who may be case workers, and I've known many case workers in my life, the greatest lament I've heard from case workers is, my caseload is so large. My caseload is getting larger. And labeled people become part of somebody's caseload. And so if they've spent their lives being labeled, you now have to affirm that they're gifted. And number 3, write down the word activate. Acknowledge, affirm, and activate. And so as community leaders, when you look at a person, what you say to them is, what's important to me about you is your gift. Because I now understand that your gift is the key that will unlock the door to you being part of a broader community. Your label will get you serviced. And I come from a community called Over the Rhine, and I can tell you from history that servicing people does not build community. One of the things that broke my heart probably in the last few years the most is that our church backs up to an alley down and Over the Rhine. A social service agency purchased a building behind our church in the alley. One day, they cut a hole. They made a window in the side of the building. They cut out the bricks and made a window in the side of the building. I didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden, they started handing out sandwiches and soup through a hole in the brick in the side of the building. And I guess their thinking is that this is a great community service. Now, you can hand out sandwiches and soup and never ask a person's name, never have to know anything about them, but it's a real feel-good kind of thing to do. It doesn't build community. And so now in the back of our church in the alley, there are men and women who sleep there waiting for the next sandwich. But as a social service agency, we think that's a good thing. My secretary one day, she called upstairs and said, there's a guy down here who wants to see you. I said, well, what's he need? She said, well, he wants us to help him get his medicine. He's been stabbed in the arm with a screwdriver. Somebody stabbed. They tried to rob him. They stabbed him in the arm with a screwdriver. And he needs medicine, his antibiotics. I said, well, send him up. So he comes up to my office. He sits across from my desk, and he just slouches down. And he proceeds to give me the saddest story you ever want to hear. He's from down south. He thought he could move to Cincinnati and find a better life, but he's now homeless on the streets, and somebody has tried to rob him. And I'm listening, but I'm really not listening, because what he's giving me is this. And I understand what you now understand, that there's this. So in the conversation, I just shifted. I said, tell me what you do and what you do best and what you do that somebody might pay you to do. And he said, I lay floors. Now, I'm excited because I don't lay floors. I affirm his gift. He lays floors. I said, what kind of floors? He said, linoleum, hardwood, tile, you name it, I can lay it. Now, as he says, I lay floors, he starts to sit up straight. he starts to grow right in front of me. I'm watching this man grow right in front of me. And we have this conversation. I then sent him downstairs to my secretary so she could call CVS or Walgreens so we could get his medicine. He leaves. When he left, she called upstairs and said, "What did you do?" I said, "What do you mean, what did I do?" She said, "He left here crying and said he had forgotten that he was a man." I said, "All I did was acknowledge what I knew what was in him." Now, the problem with that story is I never saw him again, because I told you we have to acknowledge, affirm, and activate. We have to help people use their gifts in community. But he left and now remembered that he was a man. In community, in Cincinnati, there's 17 churches called the Walnut Hills Conference of Churches. These 17 churches run a soup kitchen. And a soup kitchen, you know, seems like a good idea, right? But these 17 churches have been running a soup kitchen for years. So they called myself and a guy named Byron White, who also does ABCD training, and said, "We need help. Because this thing is, we could do this until the cows come home." So we went into the soup kitchen because we were going to do an asset-based project. For about 2 weeks, we went in just to eat, just to get the lay of the land. So we're in the soup kitchen, and we're just seeing how things are going. And we saw one guy that after he ate, he got up, picked up the chairs, turned them over on the table, got the mop, and started mopping the floor. So we asked Ange Popolo, we said, "Was he asked to do that?" He said, "No." He just asked, could he do it? We saw another guy in the soup kitchen who comes in every day, and he has a blue, a green, and a red ink pen. And he writes with all three at the same time. And what he writes down is what the music will be for the day in the soup kitchen. He has his own boom box. He has his own music. And so for the first half an hour, it's jazz, and then it's gospel. So we asked, was he asked to do that? He said, no. He just asked, could he do it? And what we saw happening is that people who were receiving also knew they had something to give. And their giving made them part of that soup kitchen community. The goal of the 17 churches was, how do we bring these people into our community as opposed to just serving them? So we trained members of the church over a 3-week period to do a listening process with the men and women in the soup kitchen to find out what were their gifts, what were their strengths, what were their skills, what were their dreams. We didn't ask about their drug addictions. We didn't ask about their Vietnam service. There are 30 other agencies who deal with that. We're trying to build community. One of the most interesting things, what we did once we got all the information, is we did what was called a wall of fame. We put all around the soup kitchen the person's name and the list of their gifts. Now imagine, you now walk into this room and you look around and go, wow, who are these people? You look on the wall and you see these people who are extremely talented, and you go, I would love to know these people. Well, the people on the wall are the same people you've been serving for years. They're the same people you've been labeling for years. Now you look at it. So then they come in and look at themselves and go, wow, that's us. It was powerful. What was interesting is that almost 60% of them said they knew how to cook. Now, we're in a soup kitchen feeding people who know how to cook. Write this down. Write down ACTS. ACTS. Write down the number 20. Put a colon behind 20. And write down the number 35. Some of you will get that when you get home. It is a very familiar word. Whether you're a faith person or not, you know this. And what it says is this, that it is more blessed to give than receive. It is more blessed to give than receive. Let's understand that for a moment. It's saying that if you give, you're blessed. Givers are blessed. You give and you're blessed. I think those of us who serve people have learned that, and we don't share that. We've learned that as a truth. We know that, but we don't share that. It says that if you really want to be blessed, you need to become a giver. And so the person that I'm quote unquote serving, if I really want them to be blessed, I need to let them in on the blessing plan. And that is to become a giver. And so here we were training these church people to transform this soup kitchen. We have all these gifted cooks that we're feeding. This is a no-brainer because this is the blessing side of the counter. If I'm on this side and I'm giving, I'm on the blessing side. Our goal was, how do we get people from over here to over here? It didn't dawn on me how hard that would be. Just as I gave Clint the job because I didn't want to go through the vestry and the deacons, all of a sudden the good church people became lawyers. They start talking about liability issues. And maybe if we bring some of them over here, they'll steal the pots and the pans. It blew my mind. Now, I've been pastoring for 21 years. I've gone into members' homes to do visits. And I've looked in the corner and seen the church chairs sitting in the corner of their house. I act like I don't see them, but I see them. I know who's taking stuff from the church. It's not the people we're serving. It's the people who think they have a right to take it. The hardest part of that whole process was getting the good church people to scoot over and allow someone else to be blessed. Because the blessing side of community is when you're allowed to use your gift to unlock the door. Don't forget this. Labels exclude people. Gifts include. Now, if you're with an agency and you're writing grants and they're always asking you for a needs assessment, tell us how bad you are, and you have to do that, that's fine. But in the same token, you also need to do an assets assessment. You also need to do a capacitory inventory assessment of the strengths of your community, because needs are best met inside of community. Somehow you have to plug people in based on their gift. What affirms you and I is not our needs. Nobody hired you because you're needy. You're not on a board of something because you're needy. You're not important because you're needy. It's your gift. And if that's the way our lives are lived, why do we treat other people differently? That we're only here because you're needy. We rob people when we do that. There's a school in Over the Rhine called St. Francis of Seraph. And I just read something about it today. Actually, Cincinnati just lost its billionaire philanthropist, Carl Lindner, just passed away a few days ago. And he had a parade. His funeral was a parade through every part of the city where he gave money. And one of the places was St. Francis of Seraph School. It's in Over the Rhine. It's a Catholic inner city school. The principal, Sister Janet Lynch, came and asked us to help. She said, I can't get parental involvement. The parents just aren't active. I can't get them involved. I send them the letter for the bingo, for the field trip, but I have very low parental involvement. We said, not a problem. Let us come in and we'll see what we can do. Over the summer, we trained the teachers to do a listening process with the parents to find out what were their gifts, what were their strengths, what were their skills. Again, we're not asking about their issues because people have been asked that for too long. You know, there are two ways to do things. You can go into a community and knock on the door, say, hi, Mrs. Johnson. I'm from the Livingston Park community organization, and we're going around talking to neighbors just to find out what are some of the problems in community. And Mrs. Johnson can say it in her sleep. Drugs, crime, kids, trash, you know, the stuff we talk about all the time at all our community council meetings, week after week, month after month. And so she gives you that litany of problems. And then you say, well, Mrs. Johnson, how far did you go in school? And she drops her head and says, 9th grade. Now, you don't write 9 years educated, because who cares? You just dismiss that. You write dropout, because you're looking to find as many dropouts as you can so you can start a new GED program in your community. By the time you leave Mrs. Johnson, she feels worse than when you came, because you've just asked her to show you all her scars. Or you can knock on the door. Hi, Mrs. Johnson. I'm from Livingston Park Community Residence, and we're talking to neighbors about their gifts, their skills, and their assets, and how to build a stronger community. And Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to go through a list of things, and every time I say something that you have done and love to do, I just want you to say yes. Have you cooked for 10 people or more? And she says, honey, yes. And you just go through this list, and every time she says yes, you watch her grow right in front of you. You watch her become a giant right in front of you. And now you have this list of gifts that Mrs. Johnson loves to do. Now, of course, you have to affirm and then activate it. But that's how you plug her into community. So we train the teachers to do that with the parents, because their gift is the key that unlocks the door. Their need gets them serviced. In the training session, we had gift wrapped a lot of empty gift packages, small boxes, nicely gift wrapped, and each teacher received a gift as they came in the door, which represents that everybody's gifted. Halfway through the presentation, we asked the teachers on this side of the room to get up, walk over, and give a gift to a teacher on this side of the room. We asked the teachers on this side of the room not to share theirs. Hold on to yours. And so you all would have gotten up, walked over, and gave a gift to somebody over here. And with gift giving and sharing, there's always laughter and frivolity and fun. And then sit back down. You now have no gift in front of you. Everybody on this side now has two. We asked the people on this side of the room how they felt, and they felt great. Now remember, they now have no gift, but they feel great. We asked the people on this side of the room how they felt, and they felt cheated. Except there was one person who felt great. But for the most part, everybody over here felt cheated. Because what had just happened is that you got up and gave a gift to somebody over here who had a gift to give. But as far as you were concerned, the transaction is done. I'm the giver. I'm blessed. I come over and give a gift to somebody over here. I turn and I walk away. So at the same time that you're receiving a gift, you're ready to give a gift, but nobody cares. That's how we leave community feeling. That's how we rob community. When we are the perpetual gift givers, not acknowledging the people we're giving to have something to give. That's why communities like Over the Rhine don't change unless gentrification comes in and people are moved out. Over the Rhine is actually changing. But it's not changing because the people there, lives are getting better. It's because they're all being moved out. And that poverty has been moved to another part of our city. And now the social service agencies will follow them. We're not building community. We're building dependency. That's the change we have to make. Finally, I'll share this with you. And I know there's a faith-based group coming up later on today, so they'll enjoy this. There's a story in Scripture. It says that a man one day went on a journey and he gave gifts to his servants. He gave one servant 5 bags of gold. He gave another servant 2 bags of gold and gave somebody else 1 bag of gold. Everybody got something. As I said, everybody's gifted. The man who had the 5 took his 5 and invested and ended up with 10. The man who had 2 took his 2, invested it wisely and ended up with 4. The person who had 1, he buried it. This labeled person, he took his talent and he buried it. Now, every year in America, every year we hear this thing that the rich man has gotten richer and the poor have gotten poorer. The socioeconomic strata of America, every year, the rich have gotten richer, the poor have gotten poorer. Even in the midst of economic recession, the rich still do better than the poor. When you look at this story in Scripture, when the man came back for a time of accountability and reckoning, you know what he did? He was so upset with the 1 talent person that he took his 1 and gave it to the man who now has 10. The man who has 10 now has 11. The man who had one now has zero. What just happened in that story? The rich man just got what? And the poor man just got? But the question is this: how was the poor man able to survive on buried treasure? How can you survive on buried talent? How can you survive on buried gifts? Well, it's easy if there are a whole bunch of people with good hearts and think they're doing good servicing you. Why do I need to use my gift if you're feeding me, you're housing me, you're clothing me, you're meeting all of my needs? I can survive on buried talent if I'm being serviced by a community, and that's the only way they know how to do it. We all must be challenged to use our gift. My father is a pastor in Cincinnati, celebrating tomorrow 41 years of pastoring. And when I was a kid growing up, my father used to always say this to me. He said, "Son, your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men." I just got the cutoff sign. Last story. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. I didn't know. I knew he was trying to tell me because I was not using my gifts. I didn't know it was a proverb in the Hebrew scriptures. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great people. That is the challenge that we have for our youth, for our elders, for our communities, that everybody has to use their gift. Your gift is the key that unlocks the door to community. Your label gets you serviced. Your gift gets you in. God bless you, Columbus.
What an inspiring speaker for us all. The rest of the day was filled with workshops from faith-based, community beautification, crime prevention, and youth leadership, just to name a few. Later in the day, Mayor Michael Coleman spoke to the conference attendees on his vision of community and 2012. So now we've got a very important year coming up in 2012, and to talk about that year, it's going to be Jamie Green. He's the program manager of 200 Columbus. So Jamie Green, if you tell us what's going on in 2012.
Thanks, Napoleon. I think the simple answer is a whole lot is going on in 2012. As Napoleon said, my name is Jamie Green, and I have the great privilege of being the program manager for 200 Columbus. 200 Columbus is the name for the city's bicentennial commemoration, which is a 12-month. Many of you probably know the city's birth date. It's February 14th. But the mayor, council members, and other leaders in this community have decided that we really ought to be using the whole year to celebrate and lift up this community. So my intentions here in a few 5 to 10 minutes is to give you a little bit of an overview of what 200 Columbus is about, talk about the goals, the mission, how we got to this point, and what we see unfolding for the next year. But most importantly, what I hope from this brief conversation is to let you know just how important it is that you get involved in this effort. That one of our overriding principles is to be inclusive in the process. So just, again, briefly here in the 5-7 minutes we have, I would like you to know that there are two simple goals for 200 Columbus. The first goal is for us to have a community that is more mindful and proud of the great assets that we have in this community. We believe that pride is extremely important. And it's not just for the boosterism effect. Research shows that, and there's a great study for those of you who are interested in the connection between pride and prosperity, that the Gallup folks released a poll earlier this year that looked at a series of communities and what were the important indicators of prosperity. And it turns out that emotional attachment to place is one of the most significant economic indicators that they can find. Fortunately, we've got a lot to be proud of here in Columbus, and we don't have to fabricate a lot in 2012. We just need to identify what that is and lift it up. So as a way of background, in 2007, Mayor Coleman appointed the largest commission in the city's history, the Bicentennial Commission. 200 folks. There are actually some of you in the room that I recognize that participated in the commission, and that process was focused on creating a vision for the future of the city in an inclusive way. And we did that in an unprecedented way in seeking the citizens' voice in what we were doing. That was an overall operating principle in our work, was to be inclusive. Some of you may have been in attendance in June of 2008 when the city hosted the largest town hall meeting in Ohio and one of the largest in the country, when 1,700 people came to the convention center and participated in the Citizens Summit. That information was taken and taken seriously, and there is a document called the Blueprint for the Bicentennial that exists. It lives right now on the 200 Columbus website. If you're not familiar with that document, you might want to take a look at it because it's very relevant to this audience today. Because one of the key things that we learned in that effort, that if we wanted to have a great city, we had to have great neighborhoods. And that neighborhoods are, in fact, the building block of a great city. So you will see in our work program, if you visit the 200 Columbus website, that there are significant opportunities for neighborhoods to be involved in this process. We have organized ourselves in terms of preparing for the next year, organized the year into three major components. The first part of the year is about honoring our past. The middle part of the year is about celebrating the Columbus that we know and love today. And that third part of the year is about this community moving forward. So although it is a historical milestone, it is very much about where this community goes in the future, and where this community goes in the future is very much tied to where our neighborhoods go in the future. We have organized our work program into promotions. We have a very large promotional effort going on right now, led by Experience Columbus. We've got a celebrations effort going on, being led by the Greater Columbus Arts Council. And then the initiatives part, the projects and programs, are being led out of the mayor's office with his chief of staff, Mike Reese, and Christy Angel. That work is in progress, and it's on the website. The work is in progress. So if there's anybody here who's interested in how this gets promoted to neighborhoods, how this gets celebrated in neighborhoods, how we do things in neighborhoods, you should reach out to me, or you can actually go directly through the 200 Columbus website. I'd like you to know that this is going to be an extraordinary year, significant opportunities to come together and really expose what this city has to offer. Now, just in closing, in terms of what this really means to us, a few months ago I was at an event at the Columbus Foundation where some young entrepreneurs in the community were invited to talk about their work and talk about their involvement in the city. One of those participants, Tanisha Robinson, was asked a simple question at the end of the evening by the moderator, and that was, in thinking about the future of Columbus, what is it that you hope for? And Tanisha, without skipping a beat, said, I want Columbus to be revealed. And for me, that really sums up what this next year is about, is revealing the assets, revealing the opportunities. We certainly know that we have not achieved and done everything that we'd like to do for a great community, but we have so much to be proud of, and we need to reveal that, and we also need to reveal the work that still needs to be done. So thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference, and I look forward to your participation in 200 Columbus. Thank you.
Now, what I want to get to now has been a person who has made a huge difference in our community. I've lived in Columbus all my life. I can't think of one person who hasn't made such a tremendous difference within the city of Columbus and for the city of Columbus and community. Cares very deeply about our city, our community. I got to tell you this one story that I did, and I'm not sure if he knows about it or not, But when I was with police, and the mayor was just elected, and they were doing a thing on CTV, and I was on a panel just talking about the mayor's speech, and I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about, but so I was asked the question, what do you think? I said, well, you know, as long as you can, you know, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? And afterwards, I'm thinking, God, that wasn't a very smart thing to say, you know. But I tell you what, you know, I honestly tell you, I would not work for a person that I didn't believe in about what this person does and what he is talking about and what he truly feels about the community. I can tell you all the time in cabinet meetings, what's going on in the community matters. What you're saying matters. So without further ado, I've got to bring up a person who matters. Our Mayor Michael B. Coleman.
You see how he reached out? That was called a hand helping up. You know, thank you, Napoleon. Napoleon's done a great job. I hope you've seen his television show. Have you? Have you seen his television show? All right. You know, he's competing with Oprah now. That's what we talk about in cabinet. And Jamie Green, I thank you so much for giving a synopsis of the bicentennial 2012 effort. And I want you to know it's an important effort. You know, one thing that Columbus needs a lot more of, because we have a whole lot of accomplishments in our city. We're a great city. We're doing wonderful things. You all are doing great things in your own neighborhoods, and that's why we're here today, is to talk about some of those things. But we don't talk about them very much. We don't talk about some of the great successes that this city has, not among ourselves or outside of our community. I think every community in a silo way knows what they're doing, and some people in Columbus know what the general city is doing. But what we need to do, what we need to have in this city as much as anything, is a little swagger, where we can talk about all the good things we're doing. This is a wonderful city with wonderful people, and we need to be proud of it. Not be boastful and braggadocious, but it's okay to have a little swagger every now and then, don't you think? I think so. So that when people refer to your neighborhood or our city, we know that it stands for something. It stands for a great quality of life. It stands for a community that cares and is compassionate about each other. And it truly is one of the greatest cities in all of America. So 2012 is important in that regard as well, because I view that period beginning January 1, 2012 all the way to December 31, 2012 as a time where we can show a lot of civic pride, learn a lot about ourselves, but also use 2012 as a launching pad towards the Columbus Renaissance, the beginning of our Renaissance. Yes, there's a lot to do. We have challenges in our city. We all know what those challenges are. And we have to fix and we have to work on making sure those challenges become opportunities to make our city better. And so that's how I see today's event. This is the second annual Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. And as I look around here today, it's twice as large as it was last year. So that means last year was successful. It's going to be successful this year because it's going to be 3 times as large next year. And what this really is an opportunity for all of us to come together to promote and strengthen communication among us, to establish and discuss best practices, and to share ideas about how we make our neighborhood strong and even stronger. So there are a lot of great sponsors here to help with this. Fifth Third Bank, Tussing Block Watch, Coalition for Nonviolent Columbus, Midwest Fresh Foods, Inc., Lowe's, Small Business, Beanstalk, Tim Hortons, KCB, CRC, and United Way. United Way has been marvelous, and then I want to thank United Way. They've done just this year. They've been great. They've been great. So I'm really excited about what comes out of here, because there's so many good things going on. Like the Parsons Avenue area, one thing I really like, what I'm seeing in that area, for example, using an example, are these potted plants. I mean, you got anybody here from the Parsons Southside area? Yeah. I mean, that is the coolest thing. Because when I go up and down Parsons, you know, it gives me a sense of progress. Children's Hospital renovations are done, and there's a momentum that's going down the street, and we're going to be focusing on a Southside collaboration on the south side of Columbus as well. But these flower plants and these flower pots with designs on the pots, I stole one. It's in my office. They keep asking for it. I say, I'm not giving it up. But it has the city seal on it and the city skyline, and you know, and I had somebody go pick it up one day. They keep asking for it. Oh, wait a minute. We got the ministerial community here. But I'm telling the truth. No, I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. I've only had it a year. And I will return it 4 or 5 years from now. It's on borrow. And other communities like Franklinton, what they got that's really cool that I like is this all the artists in the community come together. What's it called? Urban Scrawl. It's the way the community comes together, and artists come together, and they put up these marvelous arts and graphics around the community. It kind of lifts it up. Another community has one of the best block watch programs I've ever seen on the north side of Columbus. They are just awesome. And crime is down, and this community is safer because how they work their block watch. It works so well. And so everyone has a lot to offer. And so let's share some of those things here today and talk about some of the best practices that make our neighborhood strong. You know, Columbus, the lifeblood of our city, the very lifeblood of our city are our neighborhoods. And when they're strong, we're all strong. You know, sometimes we view ourselves as separate and individual, and sometimes people live in silos, but the truth is we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. And we all have to make sure that boat floats for everybody. So I'm glad to see you all here. Let's work hard to make your neighborhood stronger. When we work hard to make our neighborhood stronger, we work hard to make our city stronger. God bless you, and let's have a great day.
Those were just some of the highlights of the Neighborhood Best Practices Conference in 2011. If you wish to be a part of next year's conference in October of 2012, please be sure to call our office at 645-1993. We'll see you then.